Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Paintbology with me, Joe Barrett, teaching you a little bit of textbook paintball. Today we're going to talk about the Dorito side of the field. Part 1 will be Dorito side front players, and then we'll go to Dorito side insert players. So let's start with the Dorito side front player. A very important role because he's an attacking player on the D side of the field, but D side has always been just historically more of the dependable side, D-side, dependable side. It's not really the side you generally put more bodies on, so you can't really throw yourself away or play too aggressive for the most part. So today I'm basically going to break down how you would have played D-front on the World Cup layout as my example. So for the World Cup layout, we had no back center, which made it, kind of hectic to get out either way. And made you basically have more bodies stacked to one side than the other. And with this particular layout, it was definitely more of a two body on the Dorito side. Mainly this is because you could only make so many spots off the break. If there was somebody shooting at you from one of the two close by bunkers to shoot at, which would have been this first Aztec or this home Dorito, it was very easy to shoot anybody trying to make it out to D1 or further. So for this reason, you really only had a few variations of your breakout, and a lot of times that meant going to corner and Aztec, corner and the tall cake in front of the Aztec, or possibly the tall cake and the Aztec, with the tall cake guy going underneath the Aztec's paint into the Dorito one and becoming the front player. The Aztec and the corner were really vice versa. If you were the front player in the Aztec, your insert player was already out wide and you were going to start bumping underneath his lanes and up the field since the paint's already drawn to the tape of the field by your insert player. If you were the front player going right wide to the corner, it was because your insert player was playing this Aztec pretty much most of the game. So basically any other variations of this would have just been using this tall cake and to put two guns on D side or one gun up the gut while you had another gun up the D side. You couldn't really stay in this cake very often for a very long time because pretty much any knuckle in the snake would just tear your side up. So you were really only here for a quick primary bunker and then just making a bump out of that into the D1 to get out to the tape side of the field. Anything past that was pretty much a low probability play. So if you had an aggressive attack on this field, you were either going to run right to the Dorito one, whether it be around the back Aztec or in front of the Aztec and then diving out low to possibly be underneath their lanes. Or you were going to go to this tall cake, shooting your way heads up, and then bump your way across underneath your back player's gun unless he was already in the corner. If you wanted to play this slowed down or play this basically the high probability way like you would see on the Pro and D1 field, you wouldn't really use that tall cake too much, just because very often you had to fight through at least one gun, and you had to also worry about getting shot possibly in the back of the head by your own player in this Aztec if you were using that as well. So very often the breakout came down to using these two bunkers. I'll talk about how to play front out of both spots. So if you had your Dorito side players go here and here off break, you basically had to play the situation before you just moved up the field, because although it wasn't too difficult a field to put people in and bump your way right to the 50, as long as this home Dorito wasn't shooting cross at the gaps, there wasn't a very lot of reward getting to this 50 Dorito unless your side was clear. And that's basically what I want to explain is the Dorito front player kind of has to play at a certain pace and almost just play every single point by the situation. If there's a front player on the other team already in D1 or 2 and you get to the 50 quickly, but your insert player is behind you in the corner, he's not really going to be able to protect you from one of these players already on the tape. As you can see, if he's shooting down this tape zone, he's pretty much blocked. I even drew the lines of what the actual wire would be through the 50 Dorito, because the 50 Dorito was a little bit out wider, closer to the outer boundary line in the corner. So you can kind of see that although you could blind shoot over this tall Dorito corner to corner at your mirror, you really couldn't contain Dorito side from this corner. In fact, the only way you were going to contain this Dorito side from this corner was if you hit the widest guy off break going to the corner or one of the taped Doritos. If you had shot that player or they played short to just the Aztec and tall cake, this corner could contain the Dorito side all game by wrapping inside from the outside of his bunker and shooting right through this lane right here. In fact, he wouldn't even be containing this zone. He would be putting direct pressure back in at the edges of these bunkers, and it would make these guys' lives very difficult to fight their way back out to the tape of the bunkers and then slow this game down again. If you had one or even both these guys trapped in the side of the field, and both of you guys made a D-side, as long as your Dorito front player steady made it up the field to the 50 Dorito, you pretty much knew you were going to win that point on the Dorito side of the field. Granted, snake side's where a lot of your tagging's coming from and where a lot of your G's are coming from, but if these two Dorito side players couldn't play heads up and at least control the tempo downfield, they had to basically suck into their bunkers and just post on snake notches, and that's not really doing the job they were intended to do on this layout. So back to the point, if you were attacking from this Aztec because your player has this contained, you would bump up the field pretty much one by one, doing what we used to call an old X-ball wrap and go, which basically means playing the outside of your bunker. When you're able to, you wrap to look if somebody else is containing you or trying to put you in, you put them in, and then you go. Now, obviously, you don't always go, and when you're at the 50, with the next bunkers being further in tape, there's not really a need to go anymore, but the point is you play the outside of your bunker. Why you do this is because, unlike the snake, where you can lay down, pop up, and have angles on guys who are sticking out of the bunkers, getting to the 50 Dorito, you're not going to really have angles on players in the snake. You might see their head popping up over the top of the notches or tubes or something like that, but for the most part, you're not really a huge threat to them because they can lay down, play the wire, and live to you pretty much no matter what with a beam next to them. For that reason, the most efficient way to play Dorito front is to clear out basically everything in front of you heads up first, and then wrap and start killing the snake side from the back of the field up. In a perfect world, what you're going to picture is you would shoot the players heads up from you if you're winning as the Dorito front player on your team, and then you would slowly start shooting out the back and insert players out of the home and corner bunkers, bunkers further back on the snake side, and then your last kill, if you were to shoot it, would be out of somewhere out of the snake. It would be their snake front player. Why you're working like this is because while you're outside of your bunker wrapped on those back bunkers, this snake player still has to sit tight and look cross field at you, waiting for you to either move into his field or start trying to gunfight with him. Basically, this means he's protecting himself from you coming behind him rather than people that are heads up with him on snake side, and that means this guy's probably going to get bunkered soon or, shot out of his spot, hopefully, if he's playing loose. Anyways, play the outside of your bunker and wrap till you get to the 50 Dorito, pretty much on most Dorito side layouts, just because it hides you from the snake side, and it shoots anybody filling out towards you if you've already killed people right on the Dorito side. A unique difference between the Dorito front player and the snake player is the Dorito player's ability to kind of play a job or become a role player on the field between a 5-man X-ball line. What I mean by that is, as the Dorito player gets to certain spots on the field, through use of communication and teamwork with the guy he's paired with on Dorito side and people across, he can start taking over jobs to free up other players to then have the ball. There are aggressive Dorito front players in the game. Those guys like Ryan Moorhead, Marcelo Margot, for example, Dalton Vanderbilt. But what you don't realize is these guys aren't just constantly aggressive, meaning just always being the other team of the 50. They're playing off the situation, and they're really attacking because they have the ball. But they'll get to certain spots, like a 50 Dorito, that's the widest thing on this layout with the next things back in the field, where they kind of can't really go much further, and that's where it becomes up to somebody else to start actually getting G's. At this point, when they don't have the ball anymore to make a move or find a kill, or they've missed their shot to shoot people out of their bunkers, what they're going to want to do is take up a job, communicate they're doing that, and then free somebody else to maybe look for the next move or the kill. The Dorito support player is obviously doing the job of protecting his front guy and trying to get him up the field and containing this side of the field, but the Dorito front player will get to spots that are up closer and it's actually much easier to contain people heads up trying to fight out at you, as well as bait for kills while your support player is containing that player. So a good way to play this front spot out of the same spot on the Dorito side would have been to play one player at a time downfield. Basically pick one-on-ones until you eliminate that player. Let's say the other team matched up with you and went to Aztec and corner. At this point, with this 50 Dorito out wider on tape, you as the front player could contain this corner player's move from going up the Doritos. And your corner player could wrap the outside low and contain the Aztec player from becoming the front and starting to bump out wide. Although these two could pretty much blind shoot back and forth at each other over this Dorito, that big Dorito was big enough that if you were down low on a knee, you were not getting shot by your mirror. They would have to step way out towards the out-of-bounds tape to actually be able to put any paint on their mirror. For that reason, most people use this corner as a stepping stone to bump up the field, or as a spot that you would bump out to and start containing further in on whoever was left in that Aztec or over. So back to the one-on-one thing. If you're this front player, you pretty much want to shoot that corner out. And if you can't shoot him out, you want to at least make sure he's contained. Whether it be keeping him here until you have a guy up in snake who's going to put pressure on him and not let him move freely, or whether it's talking to your guy that you want to move up the field and get him to a better spot where he can watch over your nearest threat again. If you had shot that corner out, now you turned your gun slightly in on your mirror and the other Aztec, work to make sure that your corner was wrapping and containing him from actually being able to directly fight you, and you started making bumps outside. You made bumps slowly, basically watching for players in snake notches shooting for you, and you got back up on this wire. At this spot, you're at the point where even if he can come out and fight your corner in who was containing him, he now has to fight into both of you in just about the same zone. So you could possibly get a shot on him, you could let your player know to stop putting paint on him to possibly bait, or you could contain him if he happens to put your mirror in, and then you continue going. You bump into the next bunkers. On this particular World Cup layout, this Dorito 2 was very small. It was a mini Dorito, making it kind of a dangerous Dorito from snake side, but not a completely worthless bunker. As long as their players weren't out wider in this tall cake or Aztec, you could still get into this, play it tight on the outside of the tape wrapped, and keep yourself alive with your gun, basically shooting at this next wide body until you can get in the 50 Dorito. Once you got in the 50 Dorito, it was basically the same thing. You got in there and went right back to the job. Now, you're kind of doing the containment job. If you haven't shot this guy out of his bunker playing too loose or being pinched from you from the snake side yet, at least you're containing him to the point where your corner player can start following you up behind you and shooting a guy's cross field while you're holding, and kind of give him a little bit more ball and leeway to, get involved with the game. At this point, when your Dorito front player is at the 50 and playing the outside of his bunker, here's why this player is basically contained, and you really don't have to worry about him as long as you're playing the outside and the player following you is doing the same as well. You're basically shooting at him for the kill shot at this point, because he was probably playing crossfield duty or insert player shooting at him. If he even snaps out at you, you don't have to gunfight, because when you tuck back in and he thinks he's free to go, your insert player should be playing zone paintball and baiting basically to shoot him moving into the next spot. So really, it's a lose-lose if he chooses to fight you, because unless he shoots you out of the bunker with that first shot or two, you're going to lose dominance on him, but it's basically going to give him almost a false comfort and feeling of control, where he feels like he might be able to leave his bunker and do damage control and fill out to that corner or fill into the D1. Now, if he was able to put in that back bunker using the inside wrap, by the time he was able to pop the top or come back to the side, you would be on him at the 50 Dorito. So you're basically making this player worthless. At this point, all he can really do is shoot at front snake players. If he looks this way to contain, he's very, very likely to die, because even looking this way to contain you at the 50 Dorito, your player following you up is putting a lot of pressure right by his barrel tip and hopper, and most players aren't going to want to play that uncomfortably, so they're just going to try to hide their body and have someone switch over to cover that zone for them. Now that I've explained basically how to play Dorito side front on this layout from the inside of the field moving out, I'll explain how to play it from the opposite side. If you were to go to the corner off break, or let's say D1, anywhere where you're going wide first and then moving up the field, this play kind of allows the front player to have a little bit more ball and work his field a little bit more rather than getting involved with doing jobs and holding zones. Why this happens is because the insert player can play the close bunker, and all he does is play zone paintball. Basically anywhere between D1 and D3, he just holds paint. So if either of the other two spots decides to fill into D1 or past, they're going to get chewed up trying to move up to that 50. Now, what this means is the Dorito front player, who's already out in the wide bunkers, can kind of work his bunker. He doesn't have to worry about keeping one in while you have the other, like you did in the reverse situation. So he can move up on really the tape or the inside of his bunker, since his mirror couldn't see him. All he would do was worry about putting in that Aztec first. At this point, it was basically the same thing as the other thing, as the other play. This Dorito front player just needs to keep bumping up the Doritos until he's at the 50, staying outside on the Aztec, and wrapping and moving when he can. If that corner player is still alive and you stop at the D1 or 2, the corner could come inside or wrap high enough and throw paint in on you, so you had to be wary of him. You couldn't just stay on the Aztec without at least giving respect to the corner. But that is why you have a guy back here constantly throwing paint at that outside edge of his bunker, so he's not just blinding it down on you on your D1 and D2 and your secondary moves and whatnot. At this point, as a front player, you can get to the 50 Dorito and kind of work your bunker. You don't have to just play the outside. You can shoot on the inside and look for those crossfield shots on the snake, the corner, the insert bunkers, mainly because if you get put in, the nearest threat to you isn't just going to run you down. You'll have someone on the inside of you shooting multiple gaps and stopping him in the zones. So basically, same idea, get to that 50 Dorito, winning on your side of the field, but this is basically the two different ways you could use the Dorito side front depending on the scenarios.